A few weeks ago, we were invited to get some hands-on time with Forspoken, the upcoming action role-playing game developed by Luminous Productions and published by Square Enix. A lot has been released on the game since a certain cringe-worthy trailer was dropped in August, and we went along with open minds as to how the game would handle. Yet, after playing the game on PlayStation 5 for an extended play session, we still have concerns about both its representation and its combat, despite its magical potential. Magic is at the core of Forspoken. Athia is an other world full of wonder and mysticism and evil sorceresses, while protagonist Frey is given spectacular superhuman elemental powers. There's a surprising dollop of comedy too among the occult grandeur.
For those not in the know, Forspoken follows the story of Alfred Frey Holland, a young New Yorker transported to the beautiful and cruel land of Athia. In search of a way home, Frey must use her newfound magical abilities to traverse sprawling landscapes and battle monstrous creatures. The world of Athia is being threatened by the phenomenon known as the Break, a mysterious event that has corrupted the people and wildlife of Athia and forced the surviving humans to cower behind the walls of the city of Cipoll. This beautiful land once flourished under the reign of benevolent matriarchs called Tantas, until a devastating blight, the Break, relentlessly corrupted everything it touched. The Break transformed animals into beasts, men into monsters, and rich landscapes into 4 dangerous realms. At the centre of their shattered domains, the Tantas now rule as maddened and evil sorceresses. They're a threat that Frey will surely have to take care of if she is to return home. We've collated all of our thoughts from the preview event, bringing you the 7 biggest takeaways from the playthrough. So sit back, put on your chunkiest bracelet and enjoy as we tell you everything new that you need to know about Forspoken.
This preview covered 4 chapters of the game, starting off in Chapter 2 just after Frey has been transported from New York to Athia. This was where she's introduced to Cuff, the sentient bracer on her arm, and we were treated to the first of some of that hilarious banter we first saw in the August trailer. After a few swears, an introduction to the world of Athia through exploration and combat, the chapter came to an exciting conclusion against a big old dragon. After a narrow escape, Chapter 3 then saw Frey reach Cipoll, the last bastion for humanity in Athia. Initially imprisoned, she was freed through a torturously slow stealth section that practically played itself. After this, thankfully, Cipoll opened to us properly, with Frey meeting a host of key characters that would help shape her adventure. She was then sent off into the world of Athia to retrieve something, giving us the first taste of the open world proper and, upon returning to Cipoll, had her first confrontation with one of the 4 matriarchal Tantas. Tanta Sealer, the strongest and most formidable of them all. This confrontation sets the tone for Chapter 4, which allowed for a lot of exploration as Frey learned more about her surroundings, reflected on the friendship she's made so far, and, ultimately, looked to get tooled up to take on the Tanta. Chapter 5 saw Frey taking the fight back to this Tanta, fighting and parkouring through her domain to reach her. The play session rounded out with an epic boss battle, after which Frey seemed to merge with Tanta's magical essence, consuming with it her abilities and unlocking fiery red magics.
Luminous Productions has promised that Frey will eventually have access to 100 spells, unlocked largely sequentially through upgrade trees for each type of magic. These unlocks are purchased using mana from levelling up, but it can also be found around the world, in surprising quantities on some occasions, encouraging you to explore and meaning you shouldn't be stuck trying to grind out levels to get that next upgrade. Through the world, there are also fonts of blessings to be found, which will unlock new spells for Frey and spellcast challenges, the taking on of which will allow Frey to upgrade her spells. Over time, Frey's magics will expand to cover 4 elements, each of which has a colour. Purple is earth powers, blue water, red fire, and green is shock.
The combat spells are split between offensive, right trigger, and support, left trigger. During battle, you'll also build up charge on a devastating attack which can be fired off by pulling both triggers at once, causing massive damage if it lands. With the preview covering the earlier parts of the game, we were limited in the range of magic that was available to play with. Frey starts off with access to the earth-based purple magics, for example. Her attack spells consisted of the burst shot, which can be charged up to throw an explosive rock at an enemy. The shield shot brings up a defensive barrier, which eventually breaks into particles which fire forwards, causing massive damage. And finally, the scatter shot, which was a rapid fire attack that finished on a very strong singular projectile. Essentially, think magical pistol, shotgun, and machine gun for this base set of abilities. The support spells ranged from throwing out a whip that damaged enemies and restored some of Frey's health, to causing massive vines spouting from the ground that trapped enemies, to flowers that popped up and fired projectiles at our foes. All of these support spells had a cooldown, meaning you couldn't just rely on one thing at a time, constantly swapping spells out through the selection wheel mid-battle. You are graded on your performance in each instance of combat, doing different attacks. Dodging and not getting hit increases your letter grade from an E all the way up to an S rank, which, in turn, increases the experience points you'll receive and the number of items the enemies will drop, which can then be used to upgrade equipment and craft items. Whether the sheer amount of options offers welcome complexity or just overwhelms players remains to be seen, but there's an arcane joy in whipping up spells and dishing out damage in a barrage of projectiles, even if, at times, it felt like you were fighting against the lock-on.
Flow is the game's key mechanic. This is Frey's magical parkour that allows her to dash off at great speed, leap vast gaps, and flip around enemies. It's all handled with one button that sees Frey performing all manner of acrobatics. This does use up stamina, but there are skills within the magic parkour ability set that can help with this. For example, unlocking the shimmy skill allows Frey to keep her momentum going without using any stamina at all. Taking on and completing flow-related spellcast challenges allows you to upgrade a lot of these spells so that they might not use any stamina at all, or in some cases, even restore it. Between magical burst shots and high-speed parkour, the result feels like a merge of Control and Sonic, and just as Sega has struggled with the blue blur in 3D, Frey's speed cannot be contained. While she mostly speeds off as intended, she occasionally stumbles up buildings or leaps off cliffs into the empty abyss below. Locked onto enemies and using parkour to dodge their attacks, the camera sometimes swings dizzily. Put all that in a small enclosed area and throw in a fireworks display of effects, and it can become a little too disorienting, meaning you have to slow down to make sense of things before diving back into the combat.
Athia is an enticing world to explore, without an overabundance of map markers, initially at least. Combat challenges provide an opportunity to permanently increase stats. Pools of mana act like platformer collectibles to steer you across the land. Locked labyrinths transport Frey underground to crypts crawling with enemies and bosses, and monuments unlock enhancements, while founts of blessing unlock new spells. It's typical open world stuff, sure, but it lends Frey's story an adventurous sense of exploration. Athia is beautiful too, from its medieval cities to its decaying wastelands spoiled by the spreading corruption of the Break, despite some stiff NPC animation. A later area had scorched earth, glowing ruby crystals, and an ominous scarlet sky. Safe houses act as waypoints to rest up and customize Frey's loadout. Potions can be crafted and extra buffs can be applied to her cape and necklace. Again, typical open world stuff. Best of all is the ability to paint her nails with protective enchantments. This practice, incidentally, was done in the sacred blood of the Tantas, really adding to the occult tone. Excuse me while I add sacred blood of the Tantas to my Christmas list. Fingers crossed Santa can sort that out for me.
An awful lot of noise has been made about the amount of, well, noise that side character Cuff was making in the trailers, with criticism of poorly written and overly frequent dialogue. In this preview though, we're happy to report that it wasn't really a problem. The dialogue was all there, sure, but spread out over a few hours it was way more endearing than annoying. What's more, if it's still too much for you, there is an option to reduce the frequency of chatter between Frey and Cuff in the accessibility options, limiting their nattering to story-necessary conversations only. Cuff actually adds some welcome comedy though. Athia and its populace are all a bit gloomy with the encroaching break, but Cuff and his banter with Frey bring some levity to the world. The development team have tried to work this into the narrative because, as a person from our world, Frey sees things the way that we do, and brings her personality with her, questioning and commenting on everything. Cuff is a constant source of natural sarcasm as well, and there are some smirk-worthy moments in amongst the dialogue, even if it does occasionally tiptoe across the line of cringe.
Really, the concern shouldn't be for Cuff, but for Frey herself. The development team previously raised eyebrows when Frey was described as having a hip-hoppy kind of walk. And it must be noted that the writing team is entirely white, which brings the authenticity of the black lead Frey into question. Frey was the first character that Luminous Productions designed for the game, and while they had a clear vision for the character, it was during the casting process and their discovery of Ella Balinska for the role that they refined her, with Balinska giving input on how she believes the character would think and speak. Through this process, the team believe that they've created a realistic character that everyone could relate to. In practice, though, there are some awkward decisions. The first time Frey meets another human in Athia, she's handcuffed and accused of being a monster by a crowd of predominantly white NPCs, which felt particularly jarring. Her criminal record is also included as a readable document in the game's journal. Her dialogue too lacks authenticity. She refers to her trainers as her kicks, she constantly swears, always a good way to show that you're cool, and she's quick to anger. This all plays into the anachronistic outsider quality of the character, and Blinska's performance is likeable, but stereotypes in the script belie an over-eagerness to be cool and edgy, and there's no more surefire way to make sure you're not cool and edgy than by actively trying to behave in such a manner. This has given me flashbacks to Life is Strange, to be honest.
And there we have it, everything we learned from our in-depth time with Forspoken. The game launches on PS5 and PC on the 24th of January next year, so there's not much time left until you can travel to the world of Athia yourselves. If that's left you wanting more, you're in luck. There is now a specially crafted demo available for free on PS5 that gives you the opportunity to really dig into the game's fluid traversal and take on some truly monstrous enemies in combat. You'll be given 5 main objectives to complete, but there's plenty of scope to just explore and dig into the entertainingly deep mechanics too. Oh, and don't worry about spoilers, there's no story in the taster.
Are you excited for Forspoken? Will you be picking it up on release, or are you still put off by that trailer? Let us know in the comments below.
Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games, and of course, thank you so much for watching.
I just wish I had some way to reduce the annoying dialogue between us sometimes, Ian.
What, like a mute button?
Ian, you genius.
Zoe? Zoe? You didn't really mute me, did you? Zoe?
Peace at last.